think that part of the issue is that the 85% or 80%, which is now getting less, of Britain is the silent majority, and that also includes the fact that they are not sort of thinking about this stuff all the time. They're not preoccupied with it. They're not particularly troubled by it. It's we get it off X and we get it off some TV channels and that, and it should be. It's important that it's there, and it's important that we see it, but it also takes you into these kind of rabbit holes of distress. But there's a lot of other things out there which the mainstream of the main parties are catering to as well. So it's really hard, because what I heard when you were talking about earlier was a call for a pause.
I just don't understand it.
Well, you're absolutely kind of answering the question with your analysis as you go, aren't you? It's like it works in the favour of the leftist class. Mr. Leo Kurz, the comedian, talks about this all the time in a very refreshingly open way. It's like the Labour Party are importing the people that they need, and they can make all the sound. Starmer can make the sounds of, oh, terrible, turn the boats back, but they don't mean that, because those people are going to keep them voted in. And as long as it's in a opposition to a white heteronormative indigenous thing, which is both English, American and French, let's face it, that kind of whiteness, and that can be Irish, all those other things disappear in the sense of we're all colonialists in power. Everything else is against that, with the exception of the Chinese somewhere way over there, which people just can't get their heads around.
Hello everyone, welcome to the World of Momos podcast, and on today's segment of Reflections and Reactions, we have Sean Parker with us. Sean Parker is a British writer, artist and academic in art, poetry and cultural theory. Born in Exeter in 1975. He lived in Istanbul as well for 10 years until 2014, where he gave a TED Talk, Stammering and Creativity, and he has also lectured at Istanbul University. He has published several books, poems and albums, won a number of Koestler Arts Awards, including Platinum for his play, and also his book, Compelling Speech, The Stammering Enigma. It's a very interesting read, and he has also won a Perry Lectures Essay Award. He has been published by the T.S. Eliot Foundation, Time Out Istanbul, New Thinking, Louder Than War, Fact News, appeared at Brighton Science Festival and Catalyst Clubs and other areas, and also on BBC Radio Wales. So today what we are going to talk about is about stammering and creativity, the link between stammering and creativity, which was also the TED Talk that he gave. So it's a very interesting TED Talk as well. I'll put all the links for his books and all these videos in the description below, so please go out and go afterwards and check it. And we'll also talk about a short discussion about his time in Istanbul, how it was. And then the main thing that we're going to talk about is how and why has the culture of Britain changed over the years, and what are the good and bad elements of it, and a discussion around that. So hi there, Sean, how are you?
Hi there, Momos. Great, thank you for that introduction. Good stuff.
No worries. So start us off with the connection of stammering and creativity.
Right. Well, it's the kind of connection that I created in the first place when I gave that TED Talk was because there are two things that I know about. Being an artist and writer, kind of creativity's of access to me, which I'm very happy about. And being a stammerer all my life, or person who stammers, as Stammer like to call it, I have lots of information on that, and I've got lots of theories about its origin and things. It comes and goes. I might stammer today, I might not. You just never know. That's the nature of it. The right brain and left brain is of a great interest, though that theory has been disapproved of by lots of speech-language therapists and speech pathologists. But I find it very interesting that when you're in the creative act, the right brain's fizzing away, popping away, and the left is quiet. And with speech, the the left is busy, and I think with the stammerer, the right is sort of trying to compete with that, creating this kind of place in the middle, which is actually not perfect for spontaneous speaking.
So, is there apart from is there anything that helps a stammerer, like and any substances? Let's say, is it a matter of if let's say, because I've experimented with psilocybin, but psilocybin without the psychedelic effect, right? And that psilocybin helps to relax me, or make me more focused and stuff like that. But is there any other natural substances, or that substance that helps stammerer sort of be more focused and not have that fight in between the right and the left brain sort of thing?
Well, apparently, antidepressants do work, and depending on what people think about pharma, and that's controversial enough. They do have an ability in the serotonin levels coming up.
Yeah,
Makes
that's
the
what I was
stomach go
thinking.
down,
Yeah.
or is it dopamine? I forget. But they do have an influence. It's just because of the antidepressant stuff, people sort of the stammerer doesn't have a different mood than the normal speaking person. So it's not. It's only the speech. So
Yeah.
it's something that I've kept away from because I wouldn't want to get dependent
No.
on such a thing. Alcohol makes one forget so much about the stammer or the problems that it causes, and then alcohol has a lot of other
Yeah.
comorbid effects as well.
Yeah.
And there's
Because
also,
in your in your speech, that TED talk that you were saying, uh, it's a lot to do about self consciousness as well, right? So alcohol probably takes that part away a little bit in general, anyways, for anyone. That it's inhibition. So yeah.
and that's entirely what it is. And as part of the reason that alcohol is so popular in sort of Europe, in Western Europe, is because of our social ways. We are, we're uptight, and that's not just Britain, but Britain especially. And
Yeah.
it gets rid of all that kind of stuff. And the Celts are, they have an even worse problem than England does because of all the social behaviours. And it gets rid of that, and so it will relax the consciousness of the speaking. But from my experience, it didn't much affect the mechanism. So you're still stammering away, just bit drunk while doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is why I was bringing up psilocybin. So psilocybin has that effect of antidepressant, but it's natural, so it's without the pharmaceuticals intervention, so to speak. So it's a good, it's an interesting thing because obviously currently it's not legal in England. But I've heard like NHS is experimenting, doing some experiments with psilocybin, with non-psychedelic psilocybins, in helping antidepressant and stuff like that. So it's an interesting avenue to see, like for people like in the future, if there are natural things like that to take, and they don't give you any psychedelics, any drug effect. They don't make you addicted at all, which antidepressants have a problem with because they make you addicted to the drug. So it could be yeah. I just found it interesting that there could be some substances that can help people. But
Yeah.
what is the main connection between creativity and stammering?
Well, I think, particularly in my case, and this isn't because the stammerers are not a homogenous group. It's all kinds of people have them, so they don't go into certain kind of careers particularly. But if they do have a creative bent to begin with, then you store up a lot of communicative energy in the time that you're not able to express that quite so well. Certainly for me. And then when these things do get better, like after teaching English, for example, or after getting some therapy, and you start to have the techniques for it to come out better and to speak in a more spontaneous way, a lot of those ideas will also be coming out more for freely and easily too, without so much sort of self-consciousness that we're talking about. So creativity works better when the pathways are a bit more open, right? And so opening with a stammer really helps with those pathways as well, I think. I'm
No,
not saying it
okay.
very clearly, but it's there's a route in there somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Do you do you think like if someone speaks in a different language than their natural tongue, would they transfer the same stammering? Would it become worse for them because now their brain is even trying to do more, or actually that gives them enough time to be able to, like, the translation from, let's say, English to Arabic, and then Arabic to actually speaking, that gives them enough time to sort of take away their stammer in that language?
That's a great question. When I was living in Turkey, the Turkish speakers that I spoke to, a couple of students I had did have stammers, and they would be speaking in English as Turks, and the stammer would still be there because it's about the letters that at that
Ah.
part of their life they're having troubles on. Because the letters will change, believe it or not, in certain parts of a stammerer's life as to what's difficult. Like, at the moment these days, I'm not comfortable with L's, and so L's now and again will just like trip me up, and that student would it was just there in the English and the Turkish that he or she was speaking. I can't remember, and but it was like it was educational, that it wasn't just about the thinking about the language; it was also about the muscularity of producing it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So moving on from that, how, like, since you mentioned Turkey, how was your time in Istanbul? Because you were at a time which is pre Erdogan, and probably before, few years before him, Turkey was changing. Like from our perspective, obviously from the West perspective, because they weren't that dogmatic at that time. So how did you find Turkey in those times?
Well, Erdogan had been in since about 2002.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
But after a political career of 15 years up till then of buying his votes with the coal of the working man of Turkey is what the legend out there is. You know, he bought the vote.
Yeah.
In since 2002, he's an Islamic sort of fundamentalist in a suit as opposed to shawls. You know, so you can put it well. I went in 2004. Though he used to be the mayor of Istanbul, he didn't have any sway in what happened in Istanbul, as in it's a massive city and there's enough of a secular population for it to say, no, we're not having your changes here. But all over the rest of the country, he was able to work it quite well. And there's an argument to say that he's the voice of the working class of the modern Turkey, and that the working class of Turkey was ignored for the 100 years before that. That's what lots of Turkish intellectuals say. You know, I was just a visitor, but I was writing and sort of noticing all this. But I've always got the Oriental eye. You can't help it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that is sort of what happens, isn't it? Like, what starts with the voice of the working class usually turns into the authoritarian class for the rest of everyone. I think his evolution is sort of similar to that. That he started with that of the working class, then he found a way to remain in power. And
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
but
He's
how like
brilliant at that.
but how was the actual, like, Turkish people apart from that? Because they have changed as well. Like, not all of them, but obviously there's a mood, like that national mood has changed over there over time.
Yeah. The sort of Turkey and the Kurds is a ongoing historical tension, and they will say about a third of Turkey, of the 80 million, 90 million, are Kurdish. So 30 million, that's large. And the white Turks, for want of a better term, who could be based in Greece and Cyprus, that kind, white Turks, are consider themselves very different from Kurds, who are more traditional Islamic sort of Middle Easterners in the
Yeah.
Palestinians sort of mold. So that's just as a way to explain it to our English audience, because Turks, right? But they're not. They're very, very divided. There's a lot of hatred. Now, I'm not going to use that term on here, but there's a lot of tension between those people. Though Ataturk, 100 years ago, when he established the republic, said everybody in this land is a Turk. So he was trying to be inclusive thing back then, and quite successfully, with a massive boot on the top of it saying, "If you disagree with me, you're off." So, and the Armenian genocide, or whatever you want to call that,
Yeah.
happened at that same time. It's a million dead of one way or another. It's a longer story, and I can hammer on, but I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about Turkey as well. Like from our point of view, we just these days, in these modern days, we just see them as a accessible exotic place which is not Europe but is still Europe, and we sort of like think, oh, it's amazing and whatnot, while there are a lot of tensions that go on over there, and their inclusion in NATO as well doesn't make sense to me, because there's a lot of things that go on over there that we would not condone normally if we actually knew the complexities within the Kurds and the Armenians and the Turkish and the original Turkish and the Turkish that were important over there when the Ottoman Empire consolidated it, like just like Britain, like it took away people who were not Turkish but then were made Turkish because of other Turks, like sort of thing, everyone is Turkish sort of a thing. And yeah, we just don't see that, and we include them in things, trying to think that, oh, they're like us, but we keep forgetting that Europe had been at war with Turkey for since whatever 1,000 years whatever, like for a while, let's say for a very very long time, since Turkey became Muslim, and they took over the Byzantine Empire. We had been at war with them. We just keep forgetting that. But how was your experience teaching in the university? Like? Did you find something different in their inherently different in their culture, like than us? What would, like the good points and the bad points, sort of a thing?
I taught at a number of different the language schools over the 10 years there. Like went from this one to that one on a contract basis. Usually to adult education. Also about a year's high school teaching, and ended up giving a couple of lectures at Istanbul University, and then the TED Talk at Kadir Has University. These are very high prestigious Istanbul ones. And the honest answer to your question is that the students tend to be upper middle class, aspirational white Turks who were trying to move abroad to do things like international business and things. So they would come to try and improve their English at our classes, and they would pay lots of money to those schools, who would then sometimes pay the teachers for attending. So they're very, very polite. They're very family orientated. Slightly confused by my talking about the theory of evolution, for example, or things that I take for granted, like Darwinism, and that it was an education for me to see that the rest of the world doesn't. So, but a responsible teacher doesn't. For me, I don't go and give my
You don't enforce. Yeah.
thing in the class. I just absorb what they said, and then kept it for later on, which is like telling you about it now. They laughed when I talked about Darwin.
You see, this is what I was trying to see, because I lived in Pakistan for around 10 years. On a smaller scale, you see the same strand. So when you go in higher universities, not just like public universities, because they're a bit different. When you see in private universities, you see the upper middle class and upper elite class over there. And if you just go over there and you just teach over there, and you just like, or if you're just a student over there, and those are just your people around you, your view of the country is very different. Because those are, like you said, those are polite people. They are okay with disagreements. They might not agree with you, but they are not extreme in their nature as well, because prosperity changes people. And when you sort of expand that to the outer regions of that country, you don't find that. And what happens is, because these upper middle class and elite class who are more educated than, because they're going for education, they have more money, they have more means and resources, they're the ones who come to the Western countries, or used to before this mass immigration started happening like crazy. we used to think, oh, the rest of their country, like they are a representation of the rest of their country, which forms a very different perspective,
Mm.
and this is what I tried telling people, like it's not what you're seeing is a moderate class, comparatively a very moderate class, even though they might not believe in, some of them might not believe in Darwinism or evolution and stuff, because they have been taught since they were kids that it's like having a deep Christian religious fundamentalist view, but without any education. Because in most areas in their science classes, Darwin is not taught at all. They teach all the physics and chemistry and even biology and stuff, but they keep biology to the human science. They don't explain the, like, before that. But yeah, I mean, this is a main thing, like, the view of them from their moderate class is very different to their outer class. And when Erdogan came in and he started giving more and more power to the working class, so to speak, you started seeing the real view of Islam over there took hold. And that's why, to us, like I was saying at the start, to us it seemed like Turkey has changed, by just that actual view of Turkey has started coming up a bit more, and they started taking power and started ruling it, which has happened. And also people tend to forget that our working class is not the same as their working class. Like, there's a huge world of difference. Not the workers of the world unite. That's why it's a stupid idea, because our working classes are so different.
Mm. Absolutely right there. And it was interesting when Erdogan started to bring in the 4 Rs, I think they called it, of the of just having the basics of Islamic thought being taught in class, and I mean, I don't know to what degree that Erdogan could be compared to Javier Milei in Argentina about getting rid of all the woke rubbish, which
Yeah.
is a problem for here. But at the other end of the scale is the women being kept at home and not allowed to do anything, which is
Yeah.
bad as well, right? So it's like trying to get the balance always, and we live in this sort of in the polarized world now where you're not allowed to have balance and you're considered boring. And but I'm going to continue to say I'm proud to be a centrist, not in the Tony Blair lying way, but in a sense of we're only going to get anywhere if we kind of compromise and come to some conclusions with things. And multiculturalism isn't a bad thing, but the death of culture is, and and that's where we are now. And we're having to fight the liberal democratic woke elite, whatever the term for it is, just to now to maintain certain historical facts of
Yeah.
being a man and a woman and being British, and these things are all now being talked about much
Yeah.
more thanks to Mr. Musk. We're actually allowed to say it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing as well. Like, on multiculturalism as well. Now, I come from like two very different cultures. I was born in Kuwait, and then my parents were from Pakistan, so I lived in Pakistan for 10 years as well. And then I came over here, and my wife is Polish, right? So I'm exposed to so many different cultures that it is crazy. But what I see is, like, celebrating multiculturalism doesn't make sense on a national level. So, like, in my family, we can explore our multiculture, right? And we can understand each other's culture. On that level, it's a bit different, our outer family and stuff, and we can take some good things, some bad things for it. Because it's a smaller group, we can come to consensus what is the way forward for each other. But when you expand it to a nation and you say, like, multiculturalism, like, that is a goal of a nation, that means, well, that means you're detaching yourself from your core culture. And if you detach it, what you end up doing is, like, you're just gonna end up creating pockets here and there of different cultures, which won't be mingled together because there's not a common thread that is attaching them. And that used to happen in Britain, that there were different cultures and they were respected, and people used to, to whatever degree, according to that era, right? We had problems, we had, like, Paki bashing and whatnot, in previous times, and so on. But according to that era, there were, like, cultures that were there and they were progressing or whatnot. But we have, when we get so many people into a country, with no expectation that, not even no expectation that you should integrate, but also constantly bashing your own culture, and everyone thinking like whatever culture comes from outside of us is automatically better. That's what I see. That's where the multiculturalism fails, because y- your objective becomes like destroying a culture, for the sake of others. Like one's rights become, come start coming at the cost of others. So I think so, like that's where the problem happens. And this is a good point to move into the next topic of like how British culture has changed, and what are the, you know why are we seeing so much anti-British sentiment, and how it can be destructive for our country then.
Yeah, well, a part of being Britain is British is about sitting back, being quiet, being patient, having a sense of humour, and just letting stuff happen to you as a middle class Brit, because the working class have been sort of championed in culture over the last sort of 50 years, but then that's been taken away over the last 20 years when it's become impossible to afford anything. The upper class have always been laughed at and always been in control, but they have changed. The upper class have changed into now being quite woke. So you have these toffs who are also saying yes, but all the different colours, and then it comes down to honesty and a sense of cultural common sense, which is exactly what you're talking about. What's happened is that the positive hands across the ocean idea at the end of the last century has been replaced by let's use multiculturalism as a way to attack white heteronormativity, and in this case British. And it's started to drive very reasonable people mad. It's not the nutters, and I'm not going to even name any nutters because it doesn't seem fair anymore to even go to any particular individual. But we can say Mr. Lawrence Fox, who always says that he's a child of a privileged class, and that he says that too much. He's just a rich actor. That's fair enough, and he's allowed to have his reactions to things. And the problem is that the liberal, the media culture didn't allow speech, and that's where all this English rage came from. And this English rage isn't going around carrying flags particularly. That's not the thing. It's about allowing people to express themselves. This gets me back to my stammering thing from earlier. If you don't allow them to express themselves, you're going to see this kind of thing, especially when they keep ramping it up every time. Every time they say we must do better, what they mean is we must have more diversity. And diversity is fine, especially within your family. That's a moving diversity. That's a nice thing and a personal thing. But you're quite right. On the national scale, they've pushed it too far, as Scott Adams would say.
Yeah, I think so.
Too far.
I think so. They've pushed it beyond competency, and that's where the problem happens. It just becomes tokenism, and I don't blame any people in this expression of frustration, because what else are you expecting, right? When you're going to push a set of people or group of people, no matter if it's in Britain or if it's in other country, you will see the same thing, and people of varying sorts will come out and try to express themselves. They might not have the right tools to express themselves every single time, but I look at the frustrations. I'm not looking at the words. I'm looking at the frustration. I'm saying the frustrations are valid. Even for me as an immigrant into this country who became British by choice coming into this country, I can see that the frustrations are very valid, and I have never seen any sense in any immigrants trying to bash Britain. It's like, well, why are you coming over here as well? And it's going to play on the minds of people, and people usually don't know how to articulate their frustrations and actually articulate the basis of their objections, right? So people would say, to like, we don't want any immigrants, right? So, well, their frustration is right, because when you're seeing so many illegal immigrants come in, and they are taking advantage over you, you can see your family members and so on not getting the state benefits that they need, because they're giving it to asylum seekers or this or that. Like, your frustration builds up when your loved ones cannot get hospital appointments, but you're seeing this onslaught of people just coming in and in and in. Your frustration builds up. But that's why you need the right people at the right positions to come in and be able to articulate these frustrations and say, look, our frustration is not that they are immigrant, like, from the actual people that are coming in, or there is an actual problem as well with the type of people coming in as well. So okay, so that we can say that. But the main objection over here is that our immigration system is not fit for purpose and it's not working in our favor. So if our focus is more on how to fix the system first, you know then it becomes easier for us to deport the people that are not needed over here, to stop the immigration, to stop to have a national conversation actually about dual nationality, which for me it doesn't make sense. There's a reason why India doesn't allow it as well, and a lot of other countries don't allow it as well, because it's dividing loyalty sort of a thing. But we can have these national debates, but first we need to have an immigration system that is not being taken advantage of by anyone and everyone, sort of a thing. But obviously there's no one right now, I don't see anyone right now who's properly articulating these problems, who is in a higher position of influence. So I see people from, I'm a member of SDP, I see them articulating this problem very well, and I hope they become a prominent voice going forward in the British politics, because they are more aligned with the British needs and wants and desires and sort of a thing. But apart from them, I don't see that many people out there who are articulating it properly, like what are the actual things, and that just creates hate then.
Yeah, that's a really interesting points you made there. I think that part of the issue is that the 85% or 80%, which is now getting less, of Britain is the silent majority, and that also includes the fact that they are not sort of thinking about this stuff all the time. They're not preoccupied with it. They're not particularly troubled by it. It's we get it off X and we get it off some TV channels and that, and it should be. It's important that it's there, and it's important that we see it, but it also takes you into these kind of rabbit holes of distress. But there's a lot of other things out there which the mainstream of the main parties are catering to as well. So it's really hard, because what I heard when you were talking about earlier was a call for a pause, which is what Mr. Donald Trump called for a pause in 1617 and was basically called Hitler for saying it. But a pause is not an unreasonable thing with the state of what's going on. I'm very uncomfortable about it. I'm uncomfortable about the lack of queuing in society. I find it very distressing moments. People should actually queue when they come to Britain.
No, I find it distressing.
You find it distressing, right? And
I find it incredibly sorry to interrupt. Like, there was a lot of reasons why I came to Britain, right? Because I consider myself British before even coming to Britain. So there was a lot of similarities within my cultural makeup as I was growing up that I associated with Britain a lot. And queuing was one of them, And progressively, since I've come in from 2010, progressively I've seen like what is going on, as if like the whole nation has forgotten how to queue, and it's like we become Spanish for some reason. You have that when you go to Spain, you see over there they don't know how to queue. They will just jump at like each other, and there are more things like that I'm finding more and more, and it comes to a point where you have to think, okay, there has to be some sort of a pause for time to breathe and reassess our priorities, our positions, and be able to see, okay, even if I'm like, because people say, oh, you're an immigrant, why, or you trying to take the ladder away, or whatever the hell they say about us. Like, well, let's take a pause and see why I came to Britain, right? I came to Britain because I love the country. I came to Britain because I wanted to be British, right? And I came to Britain to be a part of it. Now, if I came for those reasons, why would I want Britain to not do well, right? Why would I have dividing loyalties for Britain going forward? Why would I give loyalty to someone of the color of my similar to the color of my skin over to someone who's as the same national as me when my priority is Britain, right? So it's hard for people to understand this. It's not the skin color that makes people, is the association that you're choosing to be of somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So another matter of pause as well is to see our immigration policies, like what kind of people are we inviting in? Why are we inviting people who are actively anti-British, who not only like before they came are anti-British, after they come they're anti-British? Like, why are you inviting these people in who are actively in the future going to work to disassemble your societies?
I think on that one is that it's an elephant in the room. People, countries do not export their best people. They keep them as doctors and architects and for their own purposes. You go out to Turkey, the centre of Istanbul. It's the centre of Knightsbridge. The skin sort of tone's the same, only the voices are different. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so the places do export their worst, or we wouldn't want to talk about people in terms of best and worst. However, marginal and dissatisfied with their own lot goes to dissatisfied with your own lot because of the place you're going to move to, because of us white colonialists. And so then you can start to wrap that up at the gender studies of the training courses they're given, and the lawyers are then sort of trained into how to keep them in the country when they're because they're all bright. This is a kind of ecosystem of disaffection taking place in the middle of the big cities, let's face it, and also some satellites out there, the seaside towns. And this kind of become these intracultural ghettos of dissatisfaction, which most of the people, the great thing about X and Facebook and stuff is that it's just like proper diversity. There are loads of unhappy old women and excitable young people on TikTok and all the rest of that, and they're all actually mixed up and going, what the hell? There is a lack of cohesion of culture, but we're so used to that now. Things are so dissipated. What I'm concerned about, back to the queuing, is that the eccentric parts of being British, the things that make countries stand out, is going to be tossed away. And I'm really feeling it in for France at the moment, aren't they? You can tell that they're worried about their Frenchness being un-French, and I don't blame them, because it's the things you can't put your finger on which are the best. And all these things you can't put your finger on are being exposed everywhere, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, like, so my father-in-law, my Polish father-in-law, calls me 5 o'clocky, right? Because the British always used to drink the tea at 5 o'clock during the World War time, right? So that's when the Polish have the connection with the British. So the Polish people call the British people 5 o'clocky, because they know, like, at 5 o'clock they want to have their tea. Right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but we are, these things that we are, like, the British would not be aware of, that how other people see them as well. Good at queuing, good at this, good at this. Some aware of, some not aware of, like, which comes in naturally, no matter which class within Britain you're in. There's some inherent things that are very natural, because people have been here for a very long time and they've been living together. There've been different cultures of Welsh and Cornish and the Anglo-Saxons and this and that, like, mixed together, but they're formed, like, a thread, a national thread among each other. And I think so that is being lost. And even, like, in the few years that like, when I came in 2010, I was shocked in the stark difference between the England of my mind. Now, I'm not saying Britain, right? Because my main focus was England anyways when I came. So England of my mind to the England that I saw was different, right? And I did the mistake of coming to London as well. So I was coming for uni, so I lived in London for 8 months only, and I was like, I do not want to live anywhere near here, because this is not England. I didn't find London to be England, because I came to Walthamstow, around Walthamstow and Leighton, sort of east side area, and I didn't find English people over there. I didn't find English people that much. I didn't find English culture that much. It's like it's not the skin tone that I'm concerned about. It's sort of like, I just didn't find that culture. There was black gangs, there was Asian gangs, and it was unsafe going. I was like, I'm coming from Karachi, like, where this constantly unsafe over there, and I'm coming to this, like, what is going on? And even the
Welcome,
in
welcome.
even yeah, even the majority of the, like, a lot of the white people, I saw them acting like that subculture, the black subculture that has been created, which people have started saying like, oh, or people use that as a representation of the black culture. But it's like, well, that's not really black culture. That's a London ghetto subculture, like, or a metropolis subculture that should not represent black people, and they should be aware of this and not be, because that is a destructive subculture. The same thing that's happening within America and those pockets in America, in New York and stuff like that, is destructive, but that was my shock that I found, and I got away from it, and now I live in a town as far away from the cities as possible, because this is where I can actually find the English culture and the people who I came for.
Well, isn't that fascinating? And that's just happened in the last sort of 14 years, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I completely know exactly what you're talking about, and it's equally strange for the indigenous Brits who are kind of going around. And if you used to be kind of on the left, I come from a leftist family way back, and I haven't been identifying as that since the 90s really. But it's like keeping it centre. But it's the whole idea of mix them up and then destroy the authority class became done under a cloak by Tony Blair, and now everything else after him, after 2007 and these times that you're mentioning, is some kind of trying to clear up what that was, because they were basically the idealistic dreams of the boomers. Without wanting to be horrible about a set, because we all love boomers. I do. It's my parents.
Yeah.
They're the best fun in the country. But
Yeah.
also, there were certain professional classes like Tony Blair and etc. who went, if you come, they will discover the ways of independence, joy, and being British. Like, well, no, they fucking won't, Tony. And that hasn't
Yeah.
to swear on your show. But it's like,
No, go ahead. I swear all the time. I don't know how I've lasted 40 minutes without swearing, anyways.
it's like that, just because you build it, they're not necessarily going to come. These things are much
No.
deep into Nissan, problematic, and we're just inviting it onto the streets. And now we're seeing it all much later, because with Brits, we want the best people. We want people to be happy and have the best. And now we're realizing what it's like to be. Not you going to use the term invaded, but I know why the people saying invaded use it.
I feel it's invaded. I feel like it's okay. So there's a few things I would ask if you think are right or not, right? According to you. So I have a problem with Britain inviting openly people from the Islamic country, right? And now bear in mind that I come from the Islamic country, right? And I have a bias because I'm an ex-Muslim. I left the religion, but there's a reason why I left the religion, right? So, and not just Islamic countries, like the Arab countries. We get a lot of money from the Arab countries, them coming over here. They don't really disrupt the culture that much, because mostly their rich people come over here. Apart from the impoverished Arab nations like Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, and those places, they are the ones who cause troubles, right? So we started inviting. I have a problem with inviting so many impoverished people from the Islamic country who are dogmatically, fundamentalist Muslims, because they are completely different. Like, they are not just different from our culture over here, but they are opposed to the culture over here, right? So they are inherently anti-West, and they are anti everything that the West stands for, like everything that the West stands for. Now, in just because we don't want to seem racist, we've decided it's a good idea to invite people in and somehow change their mind. They will somehow change their mind and stop hating us in time.
Right.
But we see it played out. We see it, like, with the grooming cases and with the those cases. We see it playing out. They're predominantly Pakistani. Why? because when I was in Pakistan, and people that were in like those sort of people, not like all the people in Pakistan, not the people in the metropolis, but like from particular areas in Pakistan, they had this mentality, you know. 'Cause they didn't see white women or white girls as human, you know, in that sense, because they saw it as that and you know their minds are, those particular men's, their mind are very addled with porn as well, western porn, right? White, seeing white women, that porn, and someone needs to do a study of it if it's not done already. It desensitizes them towards seeing the white woman as human, a normal human being, right? So their reaction to them being raped or anything like that as well is, oh yeah, so what, like they have sex all the time anyways. So they don't see that difference, and that is like, I've always disassociated with that, obviously, with them. But again, I've been baffled, like, you guys are inviting these people in openly, giving them British passports. They don't swear your oath willingly, they don't swear it, they don't uphold it. You're giving them British passports, you're giving out British passport like Tesco club card, right? Why why is Britain doing this like so willingly? And there's a whole, like, the leftist socialist class is willing this on as well, because they have some unresolved frustrations and unresolved resentment as well towards the establishment that is Britain.
Yeah.
So they are helping these. I just don't understand it.
Well, you're absolutely kind of answering the question with your analysis as you go, aren't you? It's like it works in the favour of the leftist class. Mr. Leo Kearse, the comedian, talks about this all the time in a very refreshingly open way. It's like the Labour Party are importing the people that they need, and they can make all the sounds. Starmer can make the sounds of, oh, terrible, turn the boats back, but they don't mean that, because those people are going to keep them voted in. And as long as it's in a opposition to a white heteronormative indigenous thing, which is both English, American, and French. Let's face it, you know, that kind of whiteness, and that can be Irish. All those other things disappear in the sense of we're all colonialists in power. Everything else is against that, with the exception of the Chinese somewhere way over there, which people just can't get their heads around. So those, and that's why Hamas, Israel, October the 7th, dreadful day, has been such an important day. It will be remembered as such, because it enabled everyone to actually talk about these things honestly for a change, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think so. The reactions of what happened in Hamas, the reactions of in here, what happened, I think so, there's opening a lot of people's eyes towards the realities of the left in Britain. You know, because if you have a group of people who can make excuses for Hamas, and they are supposedly British, and I think so, the penny is finally dropping to a lot of people who, like you said, a lot of the working class as well, they're not in tune, the silent majority, they're not in tune with what's going on constantly, because they're not on social media, they're not interacting with these people, they're in their villages, they're in their towns where more sane people live around them, you know. This insanity of metropolis is not around them, so they don't understand. It's fed to them in a way that, oh, it's a nice thing to do, this is a nice thing to do. And on the face of it, if you see like the things of wokeness, they are a nice thing to do, right? So if you only sell that, the face value, on the face value, if you sell those ideas to them, they'll say, well, why not? I should be more accepting of this person and that person for those bases, because they don't see it played out.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
And I think so. Yeah, and I think so. There's another thing that I've been noticing and thinking about is this third or fourth wave feminism, or whatever that is, that it is being a destructive force for the West, because it has alienated the white British people and the white English and the white British people and the white Europeans. It is men, right? So it is alienating them so much away from, making them so bitter, making them so resentful, just taking away their purpose, basically. and demonizing them so much without realizing that that is the majority of the men in Europe, and they are your first and your last line of defense against any invading ideology. You know, they are more connected to these lands. They are going to take care for you more. And now that we are seeing, like, a video I saw of this white French girl who was being beaten up by immigrants, and they beat her up and then they stripped her naked and stuff like that. I was like, well, you are seeing these things played out because you have emasculated the men over here. You have demonized them. I don't know, because I'm still thinking about it. I don't know, like, I don't want to say, oh, it's this fault or that fault, but I think so. It's a misguided ideology that has gone a bit too far. The feminism has gone beyond seeking the rights for women to just being purely anti-white men, not just all men, just white men.
Yeah, no, it's the oldest of the isms, feminism, going back 100 years to Ataturk and the suffragettes, and it has had some great achievements. In New Zealand and Turkey, actually, were the first to give the votes to women, and those are all good things, and certainly things that I support. Historically, I identify as a feminist in the sense that I like equal rights, and then before you know it, you're told if you're not pro-feminism or you're not anti-racism, then you're not the things that you sort of said you are. And it's like, well, no, I am whatever I say I am. Thanks very much. And you kind of. But what's happening with the fourth wave, and there's all kinds of things that I write about this subject, is that they've really got themselves into the justice system and the legal system to an almost enveloping degree, where if you call it out, you're called an apologist for whatever, and just by speaking your mind as a natural man. I'm not about to use the word cis, which I agree with Elon Musk is probably hate speech, So it's amazing what the trans debate has done to feminism, because it's split it in two. So they're all going at that. And I am on the side of people who are women being slightly concerned that guys who have suddenly decided at 50 to come out as their natural selves are outraged that any right-thinking transsexual or transvestite, if they want to be that, will have respect for an actual woman's feelings about that. That's how I see this whole thing. And of course, when you mention that, you're called a transphobe. I don't care about any of their terms. Transphobe, Islamophobe, racist, it's all bollocks. Don't toss any. I don't know any ideas about the labels anymore,
Yeah. It's about common sense. It's about security, common sense, and future sustainability of, like, our civilization, right? So with the trans stuff specifically, how I see it is how it should have been or used to be, that it is a mental disorder when you're not associating with your gender, right? It's not a derogatory thing to say. It's just a common sense thing to say. You're not associating with your gender anymore. It's not to do with your body. It's to do with your mind that is actually leading you that way, right? So the way to deal, or the way to help people with mental illnesses and mental disorders, is to first make them accept that they are going through something, and then help them overcome it, right? But what we have replaced that with is affirmation of your mental disorder.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know when that happened. It's sort of like, well, you're never gonna fix it then, because you're telling someone that your mental disorder is your strength. It's like, no, like, let's take the human beings out of it, right? You get a computer, right? And the computer is working absolutely fine because it has the best RAM, there's the best ROM, it has, like, every component is good. Or we say, well, this is what every computer should be like, And then we build a computer with, like, it has all the good processors, motherboard, everything is good, but the RAM is like just 2 GB. And we say, oh no, you're perfect the way you are. Like, you should identify as that computer. I said, you're degrading what should have been. Now, everyone cannot reach that standard. That's fine, right? So I'm not the pinnacle of what a man should be. But that doesn't mean that I start bringing the idea of man down to meet me, like to meet my standards. No, the so standard should always be high, so that you're trying to strive for it.
Yeah.
And that concept seems to have gone away from our culture, it seems.
Well, yeah, it's a celebration of incompetence, as
Mm,
we would have used to have called it. I completely agree about the if you get the mental health and you weaponize that into a thing that you can work on society. I don't object to mental health being used for art, for writing, for
mm,
anything cultural, and for care to a good degree. It's good for people to have gone through it, have meant that kind of thing. That's all fine. But there's a division between that and science and engineering and doing
mm-hmm.
practical things that affect everybody over there. Like
Yeah.
there's just a meme today of from the Babylon Bee about the blind pilot who's been sort of celebrated as a win
Mm,
for DEI. You're like, well, yeah, that's where we are. Blind pilot, and it's
yeah.
like you can apply all that stuff. It's like having an English teacher who can't speak English or anything else that you want. All of these things are the celebration of incompetence as a way for equity for everybody. It's a suicidal race to the bottom,
Yeah.
and apparently we're only allowed to be able to speak about that now because they've chucked so much money at DEI and
Mm,
STP. Love the STP, I agree with you, but I don't do any
mm,
political party, but they're the best. What I say to
yeah.
them is take all the money out of DEI, put it
Yeah.
into social care and social housing, and that's a
Yeah.
policy. Do that,
Yeah.
then we're talking.
Yeah, I think so. As far as I know, with their talking with William Clouston and stuff, like they're against the DEI. So that's something that they are, if they ever come in power, if people of this country have some sense and bring them in power, that's something that we can look forward to reducing it, because it's not, people don't understand. It's not even like you're hiring one manager, DEI manager. No, it's not just one diversity manager. So in every local authority, in every public sector, in every civil service department, there will be a diversity manager. It won't be just a diversity manager, there will be multiple diversity managers, there would be diversity stuff underneath them, there would be that. And then they would be doing events, they would be doing activities which take time, which takes efforts, which takes money. So we are wasting so much. You keep multiplying those efforts, and what it does is it wastes staff time as well, because you're in there being taught about diverse things, while you learn the most when you're working normally anyways. And you can openly talk with each other, and that's how people used to learn about different cultures anyways. And if someone is interested, it's sort of like, if someone is interested in finding out about other cultures, do it on your own time. You're doing a public service, like you there to serve the public. Okay, you have the necessary information to do your work. Do your work first, and if we have enough resources afterwards, we'll think about it, because naturally we don't have enough resources. That's why we have the homeless people on the streets, that's why we are children in poverty and whatnot. We spend the money after its access.
That's spot on, Momus. That's exactly what it should be. Do the work first and do the fripperies like this afterwards, if there's even any point. And any sensible person has had an absolute eyeful of it by now. So,
Yeah, but so this anti-British rhetoric that we see now, like even more played out, where do you think its roots are in? Because I know, like, naturally British people were not like outwardly patriotic like Americans, because it's seen as a crude thing to do, like, like flag waving all the time and stuff like that. It's not in the ethos of Britain to like shout about it. It's sort of like, even in the times of the empire, it was more like, we are great, yeah, we shouldn't have to shout about it, everyone should know. That
exactly.
sort of a thing, like, it's a given sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So, but I think so that passiveness in that respect, of not boasting about yourself so much and working in silence sort of a thing, that might have played into the anti-British lot coming in, like testing waters first, and then just like, now being established in influential positions. But where do you think that actually came from?
Well, it would be an extension of the critical race theory of the Ivy League as CRT, and Harvard and Yale, Stanford infecting Oxford and Cambridge. all those academics all agree, and now 98% of academics across the West are left-leaning. Left-leaning generally means Marxist, in the proper old sense of the word, which is less of a swear word in England than it is in America, because
it should be.
well, Karl Marx did live in Britain and he's buried in Highgate. So there's a certain historical Englishman aspect, though he's German. There's an aspect to him where we are tolerant of socialism on a big level, and that's so just kind of hear me out with it. In that's all right, but then they have updated it into meaning the oppressor and the oppressed is now dictated by tech and by skin color. And identity politics always looked interesting at the end of the last decade. Even I was going, "Ooh, how interesting!" Now we are seeing the end of it, which is it is more racist than racism. Everyone keeps pointing this out. The content of your character, Martin Luther King, good stuff. That's been erased by the color of your skin. So it's become the thing that you complain about is what you are, is what is going on. That's metastatized across everywhere. It wouldn't surprise me if the immigrant kind of companies in other countries who are kind of trafficking people tell them about all this Marxism stuff and go, if you go there, the English are very nice and you're able to practice that kind of Marxism there. And by the way, you'll have lots of pals there too. And everyone then makes up their own way forward. That's a bit of conspiracy there, but
So, for you, the main infection came in from America.
Well, it's the source of all the big ideas of the last 100 years. So, and the title IX stuff comes off from the Democrats, and the Obama kind of push that though Obama wasn't all bad and he was a great speaker and all that. It's like the
I
way
think so. His great speaking hid his incompetencies a lot.
Well, okay, absolutely. He's not controversial. There isn't an American president who isn't controversial. So there's always that in that incredible melting pot. We've imported too much of that melting pot, is what I'll comfortably say. I've got so many English friends, almost so many American friends, almost more than English now. They're all over my ex, and I had loads in Istanbul. They know that when I say this, it comes from a place of good. It's like their arrogance does spatter itself across the world and then go, well, what's the problem if you all say going forward? And I'm like, I don't want to fucking say going forward. It's not how I speak. I want to speak in an English way. We design this thing, without being called pedantic or a colonializer. And this honesty that the podcast, in tandem with the podcast revolution, which is fantastic, obviously, is like these two things going on at the same root is where the new honesty is coming from, and the new honesty is proud of the things that you are without having to hide about it anymore. And I'm still not going. What I've got behind me is it's a painting of mine, which is in the modernist style, and it's more European than it is English. I don't have a Union Jack here, but I don't object to the Union Jack. Union Jack is what it is. I don't have to go on about it, but that's the symbology. Other people can do that. Why not? It's not for me, but
So, and this is sort of the thing that I've been noticing as well, like especially to do with Americans, their progressive left and their conspiratorial right as well, because there's problems on both ends, and the problem that I see is the lack of context. It's a lack of cultural context and a lack of traditional and historical context that they have, because they have been separated from the European context for so long that they have forgotten the reasons why they are how they are, sort of thing, right? And they mold themselves separately, which is all good for them, like you doing that. But when you try dipping into the subjects which are in European context, you can see they lack so much of that, understanding. They're trying to be clear cut, black and white into subjects that have thousands of years of history behind it, and the reason why, we dealing with French like that right now, but there's 1,000 years of war behind it. At times, like they were us, we were them. Like there's so many other things that have gone on. There's so many diplomatic things that have gone on. So many intertreaties that have gone on. they just understand like straightforward thing, everything being a business deal, sort of, and that's when they talk about, sort of, talking about Putin as well. Like they don't see the dangers of Putin. It's like, yeah, because you don't have the historical context of Russia, not Putin, but Russia as an empire, us having to deal with them like for so long, and what is the context, what is the right and what is the wrong behind it. And this is why I found so bizarre that Britain has blindly taken in Americanism for so long, when that also comes from a deep anti-British root as well. There's a huge, deep anti-British root within America, obviously, because they became independent from Britain.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an old school route, and it's quite interesting how it's only taken the 25 years for us to almost completely ignore the differences between the Catholics and Protestants.
Yeah,
There's Ireland, of course, which is a bit more intense, but it also exists in England. But now, because of multicultural tensions, all that stuff's now forgotten in for favour of you Christian. Okay, that'll do. That's good enough.
yeah,
You an atheist?
yeah.
Okay, well you're kind of a Christian. Yeah. So that's been the case that it seems to have gone to. You're quite right in terms of America, but that's the glamorization of youth that they've been doing since rock and roll, which is an industry. Get them when they're young, believe them when they're young,
Yeah.
and use that as a trade, and everything they say is right. Well, the youth don't care about history. That tends to happen
Yeah.
as you get older. So
Yeah.
this kind of historicism part is and you start to enjoy it as a thing. It's one of the best things about getting older is that you start to reach into the past and go, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Family tree and
You become more forgiving. You become like, you start seeing things with a bigger picture and stuff, like, I'm like, I'm just in my late 30s, but I've also seen a, like, whole change between me. Whereas when I was in my like later teens or something, I would have gone after something, after someone for saying something against me. Now I'm like, who cares, sort of a thing. Like, you start changing that way. So that is an interesting, like, and there's nothing, everything is not bad about America. That's not what I'm trying to say as well, because American culture itself is very interesting and it's very good. It's always forward looking as well. Like they always are moving forward, as they say. Like it's always looking ahead, to what the possibilities are, what the opportunities are,
yeah.
and there's a lot to learn from that perspective as well. But it's just that I think so, every region, every nation, every culture has a different way of organizing itself. And once we start homogenizing through this globalized sense, I think so that's, for me, that is the point of decline of the West, when we started our intentions into globalization. And I would say that probably, for me, started on a wider scale from the world wars, because there was a coming together for a joint effort, sort of a thing, and the roots were set in, and the places like UN and stuff like that were built. I think so those were the biggest mistakes to make, because a very tragic thing had happened. Everyone had experienced a joint effort, sort of a thing, and everyone was probably very elated about, or renewed brotherhood, sort of a thing, right? And they forgot the many various differences that make them them. And they started these steps into globalization, which I think so has been a curse for the West. They say you should have alliances, but trying to define a set of people as just one globalized set of, like, homogeneous blob of nothingness, it's not going to help, because the left of Britain is different, historically always has been Britain, different than the left of France. There's a difference of things, and the left of, like, Spain, and the same way is conservative. Our conservative, not the Conservative Party, but actual socially conservative people in England are very different than the socially conservative people of America. Our social conservative people are actually very accepting and stuff, and they're sensible people. Someone I can relate to more than the liberals, like, in more circumstances than not, because they keep the thread of British traditions together. So yeah, for me, I don't know what you think. For me, like this dive into globalization, I think that marked a problem.
Well, it had an interesting start in the terms of after the fall of the Berlin Wall in '89. I would say that's
Hmm.
where it starts to ramp up because between the
Hmm.
end of the
Yeah.
war and then had been much more of a cultural sort of the loosening of things. And then
Hmm.
after they lost the great enemy of communism, Russian communism, then it's like, well, what should we construct now? Let's try the global thing. Soros, Clinton, all that sort of thing, Gates and tech.
Yeah.
Where the ideology of we're all human, there's only one blood, is
Yeah.
nice, peaceful,
Yeah.
ideological
Looks good
sounding,
on
and
paper.
good on paper, and
Yeah.
then the reality, the actual lived experience, is
Yeah.
that we are much more complicated than our
Yeah.
identities, and there's nothing wrong with that complication. And
Hmm.
so, you people in power, stop trying to get rid of all of the edges between people. We actually quite like the edges, and that's the development in my thinking, which goes to patriotism, I suppose, or to say yes, I'm a man and I'm proud of it, or yes, I'm English and proud of it, which things I would never have had to say 30 years ago, though I might
Hmm.
have said it in private. I'm not.
It was just
It's not
understood.
fussed, yeah. Just but now it's like we're having to put the point all the time. Everyone's speaking the language that I actually make my money on. Um,
Yeah, I mean, for me, like when people say like British Empire didn't conquer, like didn't succeed, I would say, well, it did because you're speaking that language now. Everyone in the bloody world is speaking that language. Even in the some small uh, village in Africa, they would be learning our language. So, so
it's
yeah,
because it's very
that is a
flexible and it
success.
happily takes in all the other words. You see, that's the success of British of English.
Yeah,
But yeah, you're right.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a good point to end, anyways. But yeah, I would say, like, in closing, that I think so. The British people don't probably need to rediscover their national identity. I think so. There's a whole crisis that is going on, and they need to accept this point that not all cultures are equal. Some cultures are bad, really, really bad, and people run away from those cultures to be part of your culture. So there's a reason for it. So anything foreign is not just amazing all of a sudden. And this rediscovery of British culture, British national identity, British values, British traditions is very important. This is why I've been saying to people to go back to your churches, sort of a thing, because if you leave your churches empty, then and not for the express idea of believing in a god, but it's sort of like it's a communal aspect, right? So if you leave your churches empty, then your communities are going to dissipate. They're going to sort of disjoint themselves, and that national sort of coming together of people on smaller communal levels is gone, and that's what starts breaking people apart too much. So, like, whatever it might be, your churches do not have to be a physical church. That's not what I mean. Like, or it could be like, it could be the Methodist church or the Baptist church or the Anglican Catholic churches or the actual Church of England churches, or whatever it might be. Might be your community centers. It might be your cricket clubs. Like, but the idea is like we need to start recongregating together as a joint effort to like bring people together, sort of a thing, and stop like hating each other just because you disagree with them, as long as it's not like severe, sort of a thing, like um, if it's your fellow British people and they have different ideas, if they have like, if they're socially conservative, someone is socially liberal, it shouldn't be like a warring sort of a thing, because we have enemies now. As I see it, the enemies are not just at the gates; the enemies are within as well. And this is a time to band together. This is the time to really come together, because if we don't, those enemies are not going to care whether you're socially conservative or socially liberal. They're not going to give two fucks about it.
I completely hear what you're saying there. That also can leave the door open to a demagogue trying to stir all that stuff up to make
Hmm.
to make it worse that not worse than it is because it's bad, but also to put the aim at the wrong direction, because these things are
Yeah.
politicized. It's not just human beings. But you are, people should stop burning down the churches. I think that would be a pretty good start. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I love church, and I'm not a believer, but I love churches.
Yeah. I
Not
like I
ashamed of
like
that.
going to churches myself.
I
It's
see your
like,
photos; they're beautiful.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's such a stark difference between what I found over the years when I used to go to the mosque. 'Cause, um, you came out of there feeling charged differently. Um, it's a different sermons that are being given in mosques. Like, depends on the regions, obviously, but mostly when I was in Pakistan, you came out like more angry, more anti-West, or more anti, like, hating, or like, yeah, we gotta conquer the world one day, like,
That's
that
interesting, isn't it?
energy. You go to a church, you go to a Sunday sermon and stuff. You come, especially like Church of England, COE. They're just mellow, sort of a thing. You come out filled with love, sort of a thing. Because it's like you're going with family.
The
In
whole
mosque, all men are going.
the whole thing is contained within the one sentence, to turn the other cheek, which, as far as I'm
Yeah,
aware, the other Abrahamic religions, and we're all Abrahamic, that they
yeah,
don't have that same thing, which is
yeah,
to turn away and to rise above when you're hit. That is
yeah,
the only thing that has created the British Empire into being as successful as it was, and to
yeah,
create the actual patience of Christianity. And we are patient. I sort
yeah,
of say we. I just mean a
yeah,
white
yeah,
blood assumed as
yeah,
Christian. That patience is something to be very, very cherished.
yeah.
I agree with.
And that you are rightly to point out that is being lost, because a lot of people have been saying like this, turning the other cheek is our downfall. And I would say, I've been thinking about it a lot. I was like, it's not. You can say it's a downfall, but the thing is, in the long, you have to see, in the short run, it might be a downfall to you, but in the long run, it's not, because it doesn't turn you in the monster that you're fighting. It makes sure that you retain your humanity. It's a very strong point of like the actual Christianity. And I'm not talking about Catholicism, because that's a different kind of bastardization in a way of the actual message of Christianity, because they turned it into an institution to control. But yeah, I mean, that part of England, it should be maintained.
Oh, if you've got a
That
gun pointing at your head, no, not turn the other cheek. But
obviously.
literally, if you're hit, then
Yeah,
that hit has not ended the world. You can say they've hit me because they're troubled, and that's the
yeah,
counselling version of it, and that's
yeah,
what's actually healthy. If a bloke's got a gun at your head, then you find a way to turn that situation around, which isn't turning the
yeah,
other cheek. It's just more
yeah.
intelligent than that.
Obviously, that's again the literal meaning of, like, the American way of taking literal meaning out of everything.
Yeah,
That's like, you're not understanding the whole point.
exactly. But trying
Yeah,
to rise above is the way,
yeah, yeah,
which is what we are like we are.
yeah. All right, Sean, thank you so much for joining us. And
Pleasure.
everyone listening to us, I hope you enjoyed our conversation. All the links are put in the description below. Please go check Sean's books out. Go check the TED Talk out about the relationship between stammering and creativity. And yeah, and I'll see you next time with another interesting conversation. Thank you so much.